Welcome back to Balboa Park. I am Nicholas Balboa. I am a tattooer, an artist, a trans man, and a mom. I live in France and I've been living here for more than 20 years. I'm Italian, and in this podcast, I observe my creative process as a way of self reflection and self knowledge. Welcome to episode 29. In the last episode, I tried recording in video, but I found it didn't suit me. Even though filming from my bed was fun, I felt rushed. I prefer the slower, more relaxed pace of the only audio version. So, episode 29, and we are back on the original format. Last time we talked about self doubt and how observing doubt can help us move forward. And speaking of self-doubt, it actually shows up in a lot of parts of my daily life. Who am I kidding about talking about self-doubt without going deeper into my own personal experience? For example, every time I send out an episode via Substack, there's always someone who unsubscribe. And it's funny how, despite a new subscriber maybe joining in other moment of my week or my month, I instinctively give more importance to the one who left. Why? That the self-doubt kicking in, and it's always interesting to observe. And so, sorry, I was drinking. It's interesting to observe because the purpose of having the podcast for me, it's like documenting and observing and coming back and forth in what does means being like a person who make a living with drawing and all the things that come around, and also who's like 45 and had already have gone through a lot of transition in life, not only the gender one. Talking about self-doubt and also like self-knowledge, that leads me to talk about my mornings. I was thinking about talking about the morning routine and how to set the tone of the day with those routine, but my routine is a bit unpredictable because I share custody of my daughter, 1 week on, 1 week off. Even though my daughter is 15, and even on the week off, I always often happen to hang out with her. But yeah, my morning routine change depending on whether I'm with her or not. And some days I wake up early to have breakfast with her before the school, and other days I get to sleep in a little bit more. And I also run Strangeland, the studio in La Rochelle, which I do half of the time with my partner, Trognette, and the studio is open from Wednesday to Saturday, but sometimes from Tuesday. And on some days I'm tattooing, other days I'm drawing, or I'm just there to keep the studio open. And my routine adapts to the flow of my work, to my daughter's schedule, and even my partner times, who lives a bit here and I'll be a little bit farther away. So yeah, when I think about it, in a perfect world, my schedule will be more organized, but ideally I'd love to have a cycle where I could alternate between the different creative things I do, whether it's graphic journaling, tattooing, or working on my graphic novel. But it's not always like that. I work more like in big chunks of time. For example, 1 week I'll condense all my tattoo appointments, sort of. Another week I'll work on the Strangeland, for example, admin or website, and some other times maybe I'll spend a whole month writing and sketching my graphic novel. It's a rhythm that works, but it's also tricky because tattooing depends on my clients, and I still didn't figure out this thing of booking open, booking closed, because I sometimes happen to say to myself, oh, this week I'm not getting clients, I will concentrate on painting, and then a cool project comes in my booking reservation website, and I'm like, okay, this person, it's like traveling to La Rochelle and only can get tattooed in this week, this particular week. And so like I don't stick to my boundaries and I take the appointment, because in the balance, getting a cool tattoo appointment feels and maybe is more important than having the fixed boundaries about my booking. It's a sort of balance that I have to find, that I'm looking for. I still didn't find. And while we are on the subject of balance, um, I can't help but think about what I was saying about my daughter, the timing, the week off, the week in. As I was saying, she's almost 16 now, so the care I give her is way much less than when she was younger, of course. Still, my day revolves around her when she's here, waking up early for school, finishing work early, to have evenings together, and making sure we have dinner together and spend times. But it hasn't always been easy, especially when she was younger. I had to optimize every free moment, squeezing my creative work into the time she was like napping. And I always prioritize time with her over book tours or guest spot, or even like building up my artist career. And sometimes I can do these things, but only for short periods. And I figure that when she's older, I'll have more time to dedicate to being a full-time artist. But of course, that sounds easier than is it. And speaking of balance, something I'm thinking about a lot is how guilt fits into all this, and also sometimes frustration. Um, because in these past 15 years, taking time for my art career, my creativity, whether or it's traveling for a guest spot or spending time for my books, always came with some guilt, especially when my daughter was younger. But at the same time, I would have feel frustrated too, because I wanted to be maybe in my studio painting instead of, I don't know, playing and doing puzzle with her. And I think it's important to acknowledge this, that this doesn't mean I love her any less, or that the love for your children and also the willing to play with them all can also come with frustration when you want to get shit done or career wise done. And I guess it could be cool that we normalize the idea that needing personal time doesn't mean we are neglecting our kids. And it's always about balance, and it's always about being curious about around what we feel, and finding the way of being caring at the same time, while we also take care of ourselves as adults. And this all ties into the fact that finding downtime is so hard for me. I never really feel like I'm working. I don't know how to explain, at least in the traditional sense, because like I don't have a boss, I don't have fixed hours. Sure, there are, as I was saying, there are times when tattooing is like taking place. I need to book tattoos with clients, so I can't decide all the timing and the dates by myself. And also, tattooing may be physically and mentally exhausting. I mean, you are there focusing for hours, managing the drawing, the craft, and also client's pain or client's mood and all that. Sometimes also like body that it's not ours. It's can be a lot of mental and physical work. But so I'm not saying that it's not like hard work, but since I feel it's like my choice, and it doesn't feel like work in the classic sense, because it's my passion and I can manage all the schedule. And also like because I had jobs in the past where it wasn't about being an artist, and it was just about showing up and doing the job. Um, and it didn't last longer. I didn't last long in those kind of jobs anyway. Um, since like as a self-employed artist, um, sometimes work doesn't feel like working. So on the opposite, like when I don't work, I may have tendencies to work anyway. Maybe also because as a self-employed artist, if I don't work, I don't get paid. So like there is always a sort of pressure. Um, but how does my week actually look like? First thing first, I guess it's a bit all over the place, so bear with me while I recollect my ideas and I talk to you. For example, I've noticed recently that Mondays for me are like I'm completely drained on Monday. I Even though it's out of the weekend and people should be like very active, I'm often completely drained. And while I used to feel guilty about not working on Mondays, I recently realized that it's because I often work on weekends, because Strangeland is open on Saturdays, and twice a month I have work on Sundays because of the Graphic Journal Club. So actually, often Monday is the one day that I can take off for myself. It's like my time to relax, drink coffee, eat chocolate, scroll to social media in my pajamas, and I'm working on being guilt free around those moments. But it's not so still not so easy. Um, Being totally unmasked on my telephone in my pajamas doesn't come with an amount of guilt that I don't know if it's like from my background or if it's like from capitalistic society. I don't know, but now I observe it and I try to don't believe it. And of course, my part of my week is not only artistic, but it's also like dealing with all the admin sort of things that sometimes I try to avoid. And if I'm honest, the paperwork and admin are like very overwhelming for me, especially living in France. There are a lot of admin paperwork to do every time, and I tend to ignore them like until I hit a breaking point every 2 months. And then it's like full panic mode, taxes, invoices, emails all at once. And I I'm just not able to do it as some of them every 2 other days or some of them every week, just like forget about the existence of paperwork. And sometimes I dream of having an assistant, but it should be like someone magical that can read my mind, that can anticipate all the administration needs without me having to ask, just for the fact that all the mental load of organizing everything that exhausts me, it's the same if I have to explain to someone what to do or if I just have to do it, because the problem is only like thinking about doing the paper and all this kind of stuff. And speaking of mental load, um, I also realized that within the years and with the aging, setting boundaries has been a lifesaver for me, and setting boundaries has become now a key part of my self care. Over time, I've stopped trying to be liked by everyone. And I'm still kind, of course, and considerate, no problem, but I've learned that to maintain my boundaries, especially with like clients or work related issues, sometimes it's interesting to observe that lacking of boundaries, at least for me, it's often related to the fact of wanna be liked, wanna be um, loved, or I don't want to people think I'm nasty. And I also like in some other areas of my life, keeping boundaries, it's been particularly like hard, especially with my like LGBTQ plus activism work in La Rochelle. And I'm planning this year to take a step back to avoid burnout around a lot of kind of pro bono and charity kind work I used to do, because like I feel like sometimes I juggle all different acts of my life. And this September during a graphic journal class, I often do the exercise I also give to people in the class. I prepare the class and then I take the class with them, and one of those things was like doing less and taking time. And so all my project, all the things I do sometimes make me feel like I have to juggle them. and and even though like sometimes I wish I could focus solely on tattooing and leave everything else behind. No graphic novel, no podcast, no exhibition. But at the same time, other times I dream of doing the opposite, like focusing entirely on books and making art and leaving tattooing, the shop, the client behind. But then I realized that I kind of enjoy all those different aspects of my artwork, art production, um, and they are different things, and also they function in way different way, and I guess that even if I didn't have to work for money, I'd still be doing everything I do now, maybe just with less stress. Probably the thing is, when I think about all those different projects, I always notice how my way of working shifts depending on whether I'm tattooing or creating for only for myself. Because tattooing, even though I have a style maybe that you can recognize, you see my mermaid and you think, okay, just sit there and I draw mermaids for people. But actually, tattooing is all about the client. I often draw freehand on their body because the placement and design, um, for me, it's better to work this way. We also have a podcast episode around this, maybe 2 or 3 episodes ago, and also because in this way the design will fit their story. It will not only be my drawing, um, but often the element that they want to bring will help to build up, to finish up, to make the final design more like a dialogue between us two. And when I'm working on a graphic novel, for example, it's just me and the page. Even though I think now that while I do while I did my books, my graphic novels, I sort of thought about an ideal reader. I connect to some sort of energy of who will read what I'm doing. So there were no one standing there telling me how to do a page, but there were still some sort of dialogue, even though not in the present, but in with the future reader. And I guess that the only place where I feel completely free is in my graphic journal. Um, like I don't cares who reads it or how it looks. It's like one place that it's like truly up for experimentation, and even it doesn't make sense, it makes sense to me while I do it. Um, so all these different way of creating, of course they create different routine. When I go to Strangeland tattooing or for a guest spot, I have to be like present to myself. I shower, I put on perfume and clean clothes, and I go there and I tattoo, and I set up my station and I clean my station. And after the tattooing, I take care also of the client during the session. And when the clients go away, go away, I clean up my station, and then I can go back home, and there are two separate mood and energy. Although when I do graphic novels or I paint, or I can love doing it in my home studio, so it's a very different energy, very different routine. I like to wake up and go to my coffee, do a coffee, and go straight to drawing. No shower, no changing, sweatpants power. So I stay in this mojo of staying in, not out, like when I go tattooing. No shower, no perfume, no human interaction, and I can stay in this sort of bubble. Um, and thinking about all this makes me reflect of my dreams when I was young. I used to dream of having like this house by a lake, I don't know, like Canada scenery, I have like this beautiful cabin with an home studio, and I can walk in the woods. And but I also like in some way can very fast access to a city like New York, like maybe there is a secret passage or teletransportation, I don't know, and or maybe I have jets, a private jet, or I don't know. Anyway, I when I was young, I imagined myself being an artist and also have a lot of fame and have galleries and all these kind of things. And now I'm 45 and I realize that this might never happen. I'm living in my apartment and uh, I catch myself having the same dream, and then I'm like, but when I was young, I was 20, maybe I thought by uh, of all this dream, and now I thought by now I'd be rich and famous and with a secret passage, teletransportation to New York, but actually I live in La Rochelle in an apartment, and sometimes I like, maybe one day I have this kind of life, and now I've come to terms that with the fact that my dream sort of life may not look the way I imagine, because even though I don't have the kind of house by the cabin by the lake, and my reality isn't so far off from this, because I live by the ocean. Okay, my apartment is not of course over the ocean, but like I live a life where I can draw and create, and I have my own space and my own rhythm. So some days I feel incredibly lucky and grateful, and of course others I feel like a failure, but both of these can exist together, and I've learned that life is always more complex than we expect, of course. And it's not about the size of the house or what we see from the window, but more about how we feel about what we do, and do we have the time to do what we love. And I guess that I can't complain. I don't know. Let me know what you think about all this. I don't have a solution. I'm just like babbling here. Um, if you love this episode, consider subscribing. And you can also leave an honest 5-star review wherever you are listening to. And yeah, come to subscribing to my newsletter on Substack so you can receive each episode in your inbox. And if you want to get tattooed, or also if you want to come to the Graphic Journal Club, the best thing you can do is like go on my website, which is nicodsbalboastudio.com. And yeah, hope you enjoy. See you and talk to you next time. Bye bye.